Hola, my little guzzlers. Camden Town IPA, which is like nothing to do with what we're doing tonight, because I said hola because we're Spanish again. And in fact, we're sort of Cornish as well, because this is a Rick Stein recipe. This is from his book Fish and Seafood. Don't look right, I think it looks wonky. I've replenished my salt. Not that that's relevant, just what I say. And he here thinks he's a bloody baby kangaroo. Joey here, sat in me little pouch, if you like. Don't bother. Yeah, so this is a Rick Stein recipe, which is sort of inspired from a visit to the Bocaria, or something like that anyway, market, famous market in La Rambla, Barcelona. So tonight we're going to make a salad again, and this is Rick Stein's Sautéed Squid and Chorizo salad with garlic, salt and tomato, rocket and chickpeas. Quite simple, shouldn't take long to cook. And that racket in the background is because Madam has just discovered Strictly's back. Well, actually she didn't know. I told her like a bloody idiot, so she's in there watching it. That's what the noise is. Anyway, let's get cooking. So I have moved a few things around for you, because as well as squid, which I'm using the remainder of the squid rings. Again, this is another recipe where it was like take the whole squid and cut it differently to this. But this is the only squid I had. Well, it's the squid I had in the freezer. I need to use that. So squid is going to look a little bit different to what it doesn't matter, it's still squid. And then I've got my chorizo. Don't be dirty. Okay, I've got about 100 odd grams of that. But for that, while I'm doing my salad, so we're going to want some extra virgin olive oil. Now, it ought to be Spanish. This is probably mixed, I don't know where this comes from. Of European Union origin. Well, might be Spain in there then, isn't it? I've got a good handful of parsley, the flat leaf parsley leaves. I've got a lemon. Oh, I'll come to that in a minute. It's got garlic cloves. Now, Rick says use 100 grams of chickpeas. I've got a can of well, it was in a can, it's obviously not in a fucking can now, is it? A can of chickpeas. And to be honest, when I sort of looked at 100 grams, that's like a quarter of that. And that's for 2 people. So, because this salad, he basically says he does it as a starter for 4 people. So I've used the whole can. So they've been drained and rinsed. I've got 1 large chilli. Did I say lemon? I've got 1 lemon. Now he says chuck about 8 cherry tomatoes in it, quartered up. We're going to keep the tomato flavour, but we're going to add a bit of puree, or you can add a bit of passata. Or if you're that kind of sick-minded person, you can use cherry tomatoes, about 8 of them. Oh my God, I'll have to have a drink after thinking about that. Ooh. And then I've got some rocket, which I've rinsed, and we'll dry that off in the spinner in a minute. So to begin with, we're going to make the sort of like the salad dressing, and then we'll be cooking, or we're going to do a little prep with the squid, and then we're going to cook it and cook the chorizo, and then that will be dumped on top of the salad. So there you go. Should be quick and easy. Except you're gonna have to put up with me chatting now, telling you about the Bocaria. Why not? Well, whether you like it or not, that's what I'm going to do. Now, this is my bowl I'm going to toss my salad in, and I've probably gone overkill in the bowl, but normally I go underkill, don't I, and then I don't have enough room. So that's going to go there. So, first thing first, we're going to get some garlic cloves, which I've already peeled. He says about 2. These are a bit old, these garlic. So I'm going to use more than 2. Okay, and we're just going to put them in the old crusher. We're going to add that to that. Okay, and that's my garlic done. Then, now, oddly, oh no, before we go there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give a little squeeze just to get the tomato flavour. Okay, a little squeeze of the tomato puree. Okay, not a lot. Now, the chilli, we just want to finely slice that. Now, you can take the seeds out if you want. Probably got, this is rather a large chilli. So what I might do on some of these bigger bits, I might chop it in half. Now, I said to you this was inspired by his visit to the Boccaria or something like that. I don't know, that's a bloody thing. Now this is a very famous market just off the Rambla or Ramblas in Barcelona. And it's an when I say ancient market, it does go back quite a long way. Notice, by the way, I'm leaving the lemon to last, because if you remember, the lemon juice is a good way of neutralising. You listening to this, you little git? Not you, I don't mean you, of course you do. Neutralise it. So I've been touching it with my finger. Get rid of that while I'm at it. And so it's a good way of neutralising that heat from that. So I've put that in there. Now before we do my lemon, I'm going to add 4 tablespoons of this olive oil. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to keep that for a minute because we're going to need another 2 tablespoons for when we cook our squid. So in this recipe, I've got a digital version of his book, Fish and Shellfish, which is where this comes from, and it says 14 tablespoons of lemon juice, and you think 14? That's an error. Obviously got to be an error. So I tried to find some alternative recipes online. They were all showing the 14. They were literally just a copy of what was on this digital copy of the book. So I asked the old chat GPT or GPTG, I don't bloody know, she always tells me I get it bloody wrong. Because I did think to myself, does that mean 1/4 teaspoon? No, that's way too small. Perhaps it means 1.5. And it's sort of got a bit confused somewhere in the translation, and the 4 is actually meant to be like 2/4. But anyway, I asked ChatGPT, and she, whatever, just come back and said, oh, you didn't do that because that's rude. She said, or he said, or whatever said, can't find any reference to it, saying 14. That's totally over the top. No way would that be 14. But I can't find any reference to it. I don't know what you're talking about. You're being busted. So I said, excuse me, I have a digital version, a Kindle version, that tells me 14. Now let me have a little look. Still can't find any reference to it, but it's almost certainly 1.5, which is what I thought. So we use 1.5 tablespoons, sorry, of lemon. So wait. So just give that a little bit of a mix, and I want to get some freshly ground black pepper. No, I'm not cracking it, I'm grinding it. Right, get on there. and nice little pinch of salt. Just going to mix that in, and then we're going to chuck them chickpeas in there. Like I say, I've drained them and rinsed them. Okay, now got their handful of fresh parsley leaves, and we're just going to sort of roughly chop them up a bit. Now this market is a famous tourist attraction in Barcelona, and nowadays it has a really, you know, like large, diverse range of goods. But it sort of started out slightly differently. I said to you, it's like an ancient market, and its name comes really from the first sort of markets that were set up. I'm just going to chuck all that in there. And it's from the Catalan boc, right? Which basically means goat. So essentially it was named to begin with as a place where goat meat is sold. I mean, obviously nowadays it's a lot different to that, but that's essentially what it started out at in about 1217. And what it was a series of stalls set up by sort of local village farmers who wanted somewhere to sell their wares, and they came in to the Place de la Bocara and set up their stalls. And it was just like all open air, and it was just like, you know, here's my wares. Right, so that's that done. We've got to put the rocket in there. Yes. So what we're going to do next is I'm just going to get my rocket in there and give that a bit. I'll get the bloody lid on. Bit of a good old spin. Get rid of that out of the way. Well, actually at this point, get off. What we'll do, let me get my wooden spoon out. The Guzzling Gourmet one, the pasta cream one. And we're just going to sort of toss all this through. Now that's essentially the salad part done, and we're going to divide this up shortly between two plates. Now both the squid and chorizo need cooking. Okay, so like I say, you're going to still want some olive oil. We're going to want a couple of tablespoons of that just to cook through the other bit, but for now I'm just going to put that to one side. And pardon me, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take that chorizo and we're going to thinly slice it. Now this is, if you remember when we had one of my previous Spanish dishes, or one of the previous dishes that had chorizo, I said we were having some of it as a tapas. We actually already done that tonight, and it was like, whew, that's a bit spicy. Well, this one actually asked, oh, I can't put that bit in, can I? Look, it's not a whole bit. It does actually say, get the nice spicy one, about 100 grams of it, and thinly slice it. Now, this is going to be sort of flash fried, if you like, flash cooked. But I need to get it sliced, because obviously, oh look, another little bit. Once we start cook the squid now, if you remember last time The squid, if you've seen that episode, was braised, and it was sort of cooked slowish for about 30 minutes or so. We're going to cook this on a much higher heat, so we don't want to overcook it. So, before we do the squid, 1777. Oh, that's just hit me that to it. The ancient gateway of the Ramblas was demolished, so they had to move the stalls. So not too far away, but in 1802, King Carlos IV visited the area, and he said, I'd like that, or I don't know if he said it or whether they decided to do it for him before his visit. He wanted it moved to the convent of St Joseph. The gardens are there, so it moved there. Now, what I'm going to do with this squid, I'm going to cut these rings like that because, oh shit, sorry. This I forgot how sharp this knife is. I sharpened it. What I'm going to do, I'm going to lightly score it. I'm going to have to be careful here because this knife is too sharp. It goes straight through that squid. I'm going to lightly score it into this diamond pattern. Now, if you had the fresh squid whole, slice open the pouches so you've got a nice flat surface, and then you do this over, you know, like the pouch half, if you like. Now, we don't necessarily have to do this. Okay, you could just chuck these rings in. The tentacles, you would cook the tentacles as well. Whoops. But I just thought it might add a little bit of aesthetics to it by giving it this little pattern. So I'm now just going to get this squid scored like this, and then we'll be ready to cook it. Now, like I say, it is really only like a flash cooking, so we're essentially there. And as far as the market is concerned, 1826, it was actually illegally or officially recognised as a market. There you go. 1826. 1827, they brought in legislation. There was over 200 stalls. 100 of them were still fresh and salted meats, and about 48 of the stalls were fish, and the other stalls were like other things. Right, so since we're about to have our salad, I've got a nice little rosé here again. New Zealand Villa Maria, it's a bit sweet. Weird that. The jammy red roux is a bit on the sweet side. I like that. But generally, I'm not so sure about that with white wines. So I'm adding a tablespoon of the olive oil to that. And then essentially we want to get that hot. Now we're going to cook that squid in sort of two halves. I'm just wondering if that bowl's going to be big enough. Okay, so 1 tablespoon for half of it, the other tablespoon for the other half, and the chorizo has got fat in it and whatever residual fat's left in there. Now, in a minute, we will plate up our salad, split that between 2 plates. Because when we've finally cooked the squid and chorizo, we'll be putting half on each plate. So while that's come up to temperature, you're going to have to listen to me carry on ramming on. Yes, they have got to listen. So have you. 1835 there was riots. I think it was on the feast day of St James. And the convent was basically destroyed by fire. So they sort of had to demolish it. But although they were sort of in the gardens already, once the actual convent itself was demolished, they took this as an opportunity. Well, let's move all the stalls where we've just, well, where the convent was, and we just got rid of it. And so they built a big sort of square with arcades and said, there you go, you've got your ready-made market. And it was 1840 they laid the foundation stone for this market. Right, that's starting to look like that's getting hot. Now, if you were doing the pouches, so you've got sort of sheets of it, then you start by putting the scored side down, but that's going to be a little bit difficult with these. Okay, so I'm just going to chuck in about half of them, and we're just going to then sort of I could probably actually, to be honest, given that these are strips, I could have probably done that all in one hit. Okay, let's turn that temperature up a bit. I'll get that now. I'll use this huge. Yeah, so they, at this point, they sort of built this arcade area, if you like. Now, the idea being that once you've sort of cooked it on one side, on the scored side, you then flip it over. And what should happen is that because of the scoring, the way it will curl, it'll be a nice little pattern. It's sort of doing that a little bit, but I'm not really sure it's actually having that big of it. I might have to sort of toss these around to turn them around a bit. So there you go, there's their new market. Don't go on top. There's even more space out on there. And then they created the fish market, sort of slightly separate area. So you were sort of starting to get it compartmentalised. Come around a bit in that. Actually, it's probably about 150 grams, can't we? Oh, I know. I think it was 220 gram ringish. We had half as tapas. The other half it. Just toss that again. Remember, with this one, I have to keep it in the middle, because then we've got the little ring there. So, 1869, the market was getting so big. The surrounding sort of areas were sort of brought in. I'm starting to get a little bit of curling on some of these. Was brought in, and basically to increase the size of the market. 1871, they created a new fish market on the site. Right, what I'm going to do at this point, although they're not fully cooked, okay, seem to be a little bit of a mixture of some's a bit cooked more than others. Just going to take these out, and then we're going to add the other tablespoon. These are going back in again, I think I said that. Okay, we'll add the other tablespoon of olive oil, and we're going to flash fry, if you like, the remaining squid. Squid is sort of done. I've got the pan back on there. I'm not putting any more oil in there. And what we're going to do now is we're going to toss this chorizo into there. Still on a high heat. Is it on a high heat? Spitting a bit. I've divided the salad up between two plates. Okay. Which you can see now. Okay. There is perhaps a lot of chickpeas in there, but who cares? So what we want to do now, like I say, just cook that chorizo through a little bit, okay, and the fat in that will be enough to, without adding extra. So 1911, they decide the fish market, obviously, which is the bit that really apparently impressed Rick. They essentially built a new fish market. And a couple of years later, about 1913, they built the new modernista arches on the Ramblas. So this just needs tossing over a bit. Okay, they're starting to nicely cooked. And they put a metal roof over the top. So by 1914, it was roofed over properly. Bear in mind, the original farmers, they were having to, like, you know, if it pissed hard, well, it rained, sorry, if it rained heavily, they would get wet. They would just open air stalls. But now they were protected. Well, I say now, I mean they were sort of protected before then, when they moved it, but now the market was definitely roofed over, thus making it their life a little bit more comfortable when they're doing their market stall. And it stayed like that right up until almost year 2000, 1998, not 1928. They decided that perhaps this metal roof wasn't best keeping with the aesthetics of the area, so they actually removed part of it and put glass roof, thus bringing more light into some of these stall areas. And they sort of remodelled parts of it, remodelled the fish area and everything else like that. Right, now that chorizo is getting there, so what I'm going to do at this point is that squid going back in there, and we're now just going to toss all that through and finish cooking off that squid. Okay, because like I said, some of that squid had sort of cooked, it's gone sort of white. Actually, I've spent all that time scoring all that, and to be honest, I don't think it's really made much difference. I think because of the size of bits. Size isn't what's important. It's what you do. It hasn't really done the sort of curling and opening up bit, but who cares? Right, so we just want to make sure that squid's obviously cooked. We don't want to overcook it, but on the other end we do want to make sure it's cooked. So come up to present day, almost 2010. Things are so busy there, they decide we're going to build an underground car park. We're going to bring in sort of like logistic area for the, you know, like admin, if you like. And what started out as a simple farmer's market, essentially in La Rambla, was now big market, very popular, but obviously much more suited, you know, for traders to sell their wares. Right, so that's spin there. Maybe go underneath there, isn't it? I'll be careful. The water will go off on one if it's bloody oil, isn't it? So let's just finish that cooking. It's time to serve up this on top of the salad. There is probably more salad there than there is squid and chorizo. But it doesn't matter. I'm trying to leave behind the oil, mainly that's come out of the chorizo. But there we have Rick Stein's sautéed squid with chorizo, garlic, rocket and chickpeas. So let's see if we can get a bit of everything. So I've got some chilli, some chickpeas, some rocket, squid and chorizo. Put me away, mate. Ooh. A bit of chilli in there, didn't I? Getting the heat from the chilli. Bit of crunch from the salad. I'm getting spiciness of that chorizo as well. But very, very tasty. So, if you like your squid, if you like chorizo, I think you definitely want to try Rick's recipe. Right, mate, you're not getting any. You're not getting any wine, are you? Go on, try and see if you can get some from there. Anyway, time to go and feed the wife and myself. Sautéed squid with chorizo and rocket and other bits.